All right, welcome back to another edition of the 2021 MLB Draft Show. I am your host, Ralph Lifshitz. I am joined by Joe Doyle. Joe, it's a big week on the site, big week for the two of us as our top 200 finally hit the public view. We still got more names to roll out. We're rolling this sucker out to 500, maybe even more. Got plenty of time to do so. They pushed back the draft. We got more guys eligible that we hadn't even ranked yet. But yeah. Joe, talk to me a little bit, man. It's a good feeling to get the top 200 out. What do you feel like the big shift was with this one versus other lists? Because I felt like there were some more movers.
Yeah, I think one of the narratives that I was following, especially over the last 3 weeks with Perfect Game All-American and some of these smaller PG Fall National Championship games, when this first class started, it was, man, there's a lot of infielders. Man, there is a lot of guys that, you might have, 4 or 5 high school infielders that are first-round talents. That faded a little bit for us, but I think it really came back on strong here over the last 4 weeks. We knew about Jordan Lawler. We knew he was a special talent. I don't think we knew that he was a top 5 talent in our eyes until, recently. Marcelo Mayer finally burst onto the national scene for us. We were able to get our eyes on him, and he went 1 for 2, but I certainly don't think he disappointed by any means. I thought he was a bit of a standout. And then you got guys like Alex Mooney, who gets on base 5 times, plays dynamite defense, shows off the wheels. I think he's a burgeoning first-round pick if he's able to carry that through the rest of the summer. And then Edwin Arroyo pops for us a little bit. He kind of just outside the top 100. Now he's in the top 50. And then Khalil Watson is still hanging around. Michael Braswell had a good showing. I just think this prep infield class is really starting to rise to the top. What about you?
Yeah, it was funny. You kind of hit the nail on the head with Mooney. That was one of the things that I sort of took away from this last list and a lot of it was based off of, the All-American Classic and his performance there. And I think being able to line them up in a situation like that, where it's not like sensory overload, the way that national can be, where you're sitting there for 3 consecutive days, you're trying to jot notes on everybody, you're going to see 100+ players, right? Where national, it's down a little bit more. You've maybe had a couple looks on those, All-American game. You've had a couple looks on those guys. It's not, your first sort of rodeo. Yeah, I was relatively high on Mooney. I'm high on the kid. Obviously we're friendly with his hitting coach. We got some inside information there.
There's that.
Just on the family and the kind of individual he is and what his work ethic is. But the skills match up. I mean, he is, in my opinion, easily one of the top, 15 prep players in the class, 15 to 20 prep players in the class. I think he has to be in any of those conversations. Maybe he's not 5 to 6 to 7. We saw some, great performances by some of the top arms, over the last, we'll say, couple of months, because maybe Painter doesn't stick out at this one, but he's still throwing 95. We've seen the best of Painter recently. A guy like Chase Petty, the stuff is so dynamic. And it seems like every time he comes out, it could be the changeup that's better. It could be the slider. It varies. I think the other thing that's gone on as well is we've gotten a little bit more information on the college side. Guys are back on campus. They're throwing bullpens. There's some workouts. There's information that's publicly available, some stuff that's kind of trickling to us through back channels as well. And we were able to get a guy that maybe wasn't on the list the last time, like Rod Boone. Big shout out to Eccentric Laddie, who's very in the Boone camp. And I think, it's not just him. Other people throughout the industry are starting to talk about Boone. So that information is getting out there just in terms of the efficiency on the fastball, the fact that he's up to 93, 94 in some of these pens, and thinks he can throw, even harder than that with, some good secondaries. And I think the other thing was, as the information's come in, whether it be data, whether it be more reports, whether it be some of these events, wooden bat leagues, I feel more stronger in some of my opinions. And some of the guys that maybe I wanted to push up after national, but I wanted to pump the brakes on a little bit. And sometimes that has to do with pedigree, but we have so much time in the process that we have an opportunity to sort of take a look, take a snapshot, be a little bit, less sort of aggressive and a little bit more
Right.
passive. Let them make the statement, reaffirm it, and then you have a good foundation to sort of build off of. I think a guy like that is Gage Jump, who's been one of the better arms. I know he wasn't at All-American game, but regardless of the times we've seen him pitch, the information that we do get from him, just from even I think Instagram, from some of those Rapsodo screens and things like that, how efficient the backspin is, his fastball, the secondaries are coming along. I think even a guy like Wick, who we didn't rank as highly, and a lot of good information came out from his performances over the summer. We got to take a deeper look at him. I kind of feel the same way about like a Ryan Cusick as well. Seeing him progress as well during the summer, and regardless of whether it was in the Cape Cod League, the Coastal Plain League, and it maybe wasn't as aggressive in terms of the competition, the higher level competition that he was facing. But if you're still doing good things, especially from a pitch metrics side of things, you're still doing good things. It's going to translate. And I think we're seeing more of that. So I don't know. I feel like there's Jackson, Jobe. That's a guy that after seeing him in All-American game, it was like, push this dude way up.
Yeah.
And then I think we have some other guys we maybe didn't know, but I'll leave some of those names for us to discuss in a moment.
On Jobe, I'm surprised. Jackson Jobe is a guy. I'm a little surprised that the industry as a whole. I mean, we've been pretty aggressive with him. We've got him. I think we've got him just inside the first round right now, like number 30. I'm surprised that he hasn't gotten more helium from some of the other publications, because you're talking about a guy that has a body that suggests and mechanics that suggest way more velos coming, like 97, 98 consistently, with a true 70 grade slider. And for me, a changeup that at least flashed once better than it did at PG National. So I think Jobe could be, I think he could end up being like a top 20, top 15 guy in this class if his trajectory doesn't change. I wanted to kind of hit you back on the Gage Jump thing, because he wasn't at PG All-American, but Gage is part of a bigger grouping of guys that I'm just absolutely really enthralled by right now, and that's the prep left-handers. I think there's 5 or 6 guys in this prep lefty class that have all shown the ability to potentially be a first-round pick. And I'm speaking of Maddox Bruns, who had a tough day, but I don't think anybody's going to argue with the stuff. The stuff is still there. It's just a bit of an issue with command. Gage Jump, of course. Carter Holton had a really good day. He was 94 to 96 with a pretty good changeup, pretty good slider. He's a name that I think did really, really well for his stock. We've got him inside the second round now. Anthony Solometto, who we have not seen yet, has one of the funkier, just nastier deliveries in the class.
Throws of Walker Johnson.
Yeah, he looks like Mackenzie Gore shapeshifts into Madison Bumgarner. He's really fun. I'm hoping we get to see a little bit more live looks of him, but we've got him just at the beginning of the second round. And then a couple of guys that, more people are familiar with. Josh Hardell, I think, is the one that everyone's going to jump to. Just the kid just oozes projectability, and you can't help but think he's going to be like 92 to 94 next spring. So I'm really interested in the prep lefties. I think Gage Jump is a guy that, because of his size, and this is no slight to Gage, I think he's just going to have a hard time ascending in national circles. But from this chair, it wouldn't surprise me at all if a team falls in love with him and takes him in comp round A. He sneaks into that top 40 conversation. Is there anyone from the lefty group that kind of jumped out to you out of that mix?
Yeah, I think, Solometto is a guy that we haven't seen as much of, but he just jumps off the page at you because of how wacky the operation is. And I tend to like somebody who's funky like that. And we'll jump into that in a second. But, I thought Drew Gray showed pretty well from IMG Academy. He's a two-way guy at All-American game. I know, he gave up the homer to Ford, but another interesting, arm, interesting player there. Another one is, I guess, his high school teammate, Mason Albright. He's up a ton from where we had him before. I think he's up 40, 50 spots, somewhere in that range, where I think Gray's up 108. So that goes to show you.
Yeah.
There are some guys that jumped on this list for sure. Carter Holton had a huge jump, I think, that you mentioned before, as well. But yeah, it's a good prep lefty group. There's a lot of good lefties in general. There's a handful of good lefties in the college class as well. Sort of jumped off or headed off by Steve Hadger. The one I wanted to ask you about, and I had a couple of guys sort of hammering me on this a little bit, but Ricky Tiedemann, we have him at 39 on our list. I'm a little bit low. I think I have close to 50. You have him closer to 30. Hence the 39 ranking. What changed with Ricky Tiedemann? Is the velocity up? Do you feel like he just fits into this class better than he did in last year's class? It was a little bit deeper, especially with college talent and some really, really high-end high school arms. What sort of makes him like we'll say a second round guy this year versus like a third or a fourth round guy last year that didn't sign?
Well, I had Tiedemann as a second round guy last year, but I think the big thing with Tiedemann was he came on really late. He was like 86 to 89 last fall, and then he really kind of burst onto the scene in the spring. So, by the time he was 91, 93, it was a little late. He had kind of missed the showcase circuit. And then with his commitment to UCLA, signability concerns obviously might have been something that was taken into consideration. But his stuff really pops for me. I know that a lot of people really, really like him. He's 92, 94 now. He's shown good command. The body suggests that there's probably more velo coming. And, he's got a 55 changeup that he spots more often than not. And I think the changeup is, if it's a good one, I think the changeup is the best pitch in baseball. Also has a slider that more often than not 45 or a 50. But he just has, the entire arsenal that makes you think 6'3", 200 pounds. He's going to be draft eligible again at Long Beach CC, just 19 years old. If a team falls in love with the stuff, you're talking about a lefty throwing 92, 94 with a great changeup and a big body. So, I think Tiedemann's going to be a steal for whoever takes him. I think he just came on a little bit too late. A couple other things that I kind of wanted to talk about in this pod, because the biggest thing with these updates is who's going up the picks, who's going down the picks. A couple of guys kind of fell off the list a little bit here for no reason other than I think it was just they got passed up by some other guys. But let's just pick out a couple of these here really quickly. A guy that we haven't really talked about much, and I hope I'm not putting you on the spot here, is Drake Varnedo. Shortstop, had a ton of cred going into PG National. Just hasn't really shown out for you and I. He's a guy that I think in a deep prep shortstop class is kind of fallen off a little bit. And then the other guy, and you can pick two on your own if you'd like. The other guy is Braylon Bishop for me. I had him going into All-American as like a comp round A type talent, just someone that was going to be really good clay to mold. Now I've got him down in the 70s. You've got him down in the 70s as well. It just doesn't seem like that swing is syncing up quite well enough against this top tier talent to hit. So he's going to be a name that I'm watching. I expect him to rise just because he's really talented. But for now, I'm going to pump the brakes a little bit on those two. What about you? You got anybody that's kind of stuck out?
Yeah. I was trying to look at where Varnedo was on our list, and I just found 172.
Yeah.
I forgot he was a two-way guy, another IMG guy.
They're all IMG guys.
Yeah, right. But to kind of answer your question at first, I feel like we gave him a little bit longer to prove us wrong than maybe some other guys based on the pedigree and some of those things. But he just hasn't shown well. And that dates back, as you said, to National. I thought he had a very poor showing there. And I don't want to get in, start trashing high school kids and that sort of thing. But, he has the opportunity on a great high school team to have a lot of eyes in front of him. He performs well in game, in high school. I think that can do a lot to boost his stock. Didn't have a great summer though, and I think that's pretty easy to say. Couple guys that I'm going to see in a few weeks that I'm interested to have them prove me wrong. One being Ryan Spikes, who I think is down a little bit in this most recent update. He's just been sort of another guy. There's obviously offensive upside there, but he hasn't wowed me. And there's other guys that maybe I was less familiar on that have been, very strong performers. And the other one is somebody I was really high on coming into the summer and sort of the showcase circuit season, and that's Riggio. I'm going to see him in a couple of weeks, and I'm interested to see Rock. I hope he hits for me. I was really jacked up on him in the swing, the compact power, compact stroke, the build, all that sort of stuff. He seemed like he could be a legitimate, bat first, say second baseman or whatever, and just haven't seen it. It hasn't been, a great summer for Riggio either. So once again, I'm hoping he's a guy where I'm proved wrong. After what his showing is, at the event in Fenway in a few weeks.
All right. So here's, I think, a question that everybody's going to want answered. Right now, we currently have the top. We'll do top 7. We've got it: Kumar Rocker, Jordan Lawler, Jaden Hill, Judd Fabian, Matt McLean, Ethan Wilson at 6, and then Jack Leiter. And I'll throw in Marcelo Mayer at 8 because he's a good friend of the show. So those are our top 8 right now. You can address this with how you've ranked them. You can address this with how we came together to form that top 8. What are your thoughts on that top 8 right now, and kind of how would you surmise how we've gotten to this point?
It's a funny group because I think that it's kind of like there's like some peaks and valleys here and some different types of players where for me, I still think, and I know that we want to have a debate about this, but I really think at this point it's Kumar Rocker 1. And there's nobody that's unseated him. That could certainly change over the course of the winter into the spring, and when we finally get to July. But I think it's Rocker 1. He seems to be the impact arm here and the clear number 1, and sort of the highest upside guy with the highest floor. And he's famous too, so I think that probably boosted a little bit.
There's a celebrity bonus there.
Lawler is 2. I think very consistent. Maybe his upside is a little bit underrated, but he's just such a good prospect across the board. Having spoken with him, he's a really impressive kid. Almost like a photographic memory when it comes to his at-bats. You can just remember from pitch to pitch what the sequence was. That's a special guy, and a guy that sees the game differently than others. Another guy that we've interviewed, Jaden Hill. I think Hill has, potentially, he's a dark horse for 1-1. And
I agree.
The reason I say that is because his stuff is so good. His numbers have been good when he's pitched at LSU. He just hasn't had a ton of opportunity. If he starts, let's say he's the Saturday starter, right? And he starts in the SEC this year and he pushes, there's a chance he goes 1. I mean, let's say, and it's not all that out of the realm of possibility that he outpitches Kumar Rocker, in the SEC and is the guy. It wouldn't shock me.
For sure.
You have one there. I think Judd Fabian is, once again, there's a whole sort of litany of tools. He's a well-balanced player on both sides of the ball. But maybe there's like a little bit of a lack of upside once again, that he's not somebody that's going to be, an impact bat, but, more like an above average to, maybe all-star in a season or two type of corner outfielder. Maybe he plays center for a while that hits 5 or 6 in your lineup at like his peak years. I just don't think this isn't a top of the order bat. This isn't a 3-hitter or 4-hitter. And like, an elite outfielder. I think you're getting more Jackie Bradley Jr. here than you are Mookie Betts. All right.
Well, that's a margin, man.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, JBJ is has been an elite center fielder. His offensive game is above average. He gets on base a little bit. He can hit for some power. the upside, the ceiling with Fabian is higher, but I mean, JBJ's ceiling coming out of South Carolina was probably higher too, to be fair.
Yeah.
So, I just sort of, I always like to comp it to guys that like prospects I've watched. McLean is, once again, he's kind of a little bit safe, I don't think he's the guy where I think he could pop, because if the power comes, he adds a little bit more thunder to that bat. He's kind of leveraged that he could turn into that type of guy. I just don't know if, he's an everyday shortstop and sort of like these peripheral skills that would have built up somebody like an Austin Martin. He's almost like a poor man's version of that.
It would have been nice if he got ball.
If
he got 50 games at shortstop this year and we were able to evaluate him, and then games on the Cape. But I think one thing is he didn't really get the opportunity. I mean, he didn't really get the opportunity to play shortstop his freshman year. And then he goes down to the Cape and he gets like 23 games at shortstop down there, and he plays a bunch of them in center field. And it's just like, I'd like to see the kid melt into a position and own it. And I think we would have gotten that.
He might be a little Zobrist-ish.
Zobrist? I could see that.
That he can play a bunch of different positions. And that might actually be his strength defensively, that he can fit in as like a Swiss Army knife. I kind of look at him as like maybe a center fielder or even like a second baseman. Seen him play some third and short. I just don't know if the arm is gonna work there long term in the majors.
Sounds like you've got like a Chris Taylor archetype here.
There's a chance that that's kind of what it is. I would hope that he's a little bit better than what. Now Taylor's been bad. He's been awesome the last 2 weeks.
Just a slow starter. Yeah,
I guess. And then Ethan Wilson is like the Jaden Hill of college bats. He's the guy that could move up to 1-1. He's got a big performance. I think the thing that he has going against him is the fact that he is South Alabama. There are a lot of sort of consistencies when you compare and contrast him and Heston Kjerstad, just in terms of like a big bat that's leveraged for power. But the thing with Wilson is a better defensive skills. Wilson's a better athlete. Wilson's a better runner. Maybe Kjerstad's hit tool is a little better, but I'm not even sure about that.
I don't know. Yeah.
Very similar. I actually think Ethan Wilson could be a better version of Heston Kjerstad that goes to a smaller school, that goes to South Alabama versus in Arkansas. So I do think that there's some bias there. Jack Leiter, to me, I think could probably even get pushed down a little bit more. He's interesting, but I don't view Leiter as even necessarily like a slam dunk mid-rotation arm. Maybe I'm wrong about that. But he feels very much like a guy that's going to ascend really quickly and would just be major league average to a little bit above, which is a fine outcome. And I think, any team is going to take him is going to be fine with that. But, I don't think this guy's going to be, a number two, certainly not a number one, but not a number two or number three, sort of like mid-rotation stalwart. I just don't see that.
It feels like,
I don't know. There's some weird things with Leiter that I'm just not so sure. Now, if he comes out and he's pumping 94, 95, and he tightens up the breaking ball a little bit because it is a little loopy, yeah, maybe. I can definitely see him moving up a ton, but he's pretty polished already.
Nothing against Leiter, because I think we both like Leiter. We don't love him, but I think more than anything, there's some fatigue. There's just some general fatigue on Jack Leiter because he shows up to Vanderbilt. He's got MLB bloodlines. He absolutely shuts down, destroys Evansville and Central Arkansas, and he's this social media wonderkind. And then baseball stops. Everyone takes a step back and says, okay, well, he walked a ton of people from D3, D2 schools. And yeah, he was striking everyone out, but what do we know? Like, who is Jack Leiter? Well, Jack Leiter is 90 to 92 with a loopy curveball that he can throw for strikes. Good cutter, average changeup. But I think more than anything, he's just maybe more than anyone, he has been a victim of not being able to pitch this year because he needs to.
Well, or he's benefited from not being able to pitch more than anybody else. I believe
you can make that argument.
Former and not the latter, but I just think there's a way that you could spin it either way. And then Marcelo Mayer is a guy that just didn't have a ton of time. Just some concerns about travel. with him in his club, and he just made the decision that was best for his family. So we really have only seen him at PG All-American game. So yeah, he's another guy that could probably move up over Lawler. I mean, the skills are there. The swing looks great. It's just a matter of opportunities and looks.
Yeah, I think they're going to be. I think we're going to watch them tassel back and forth for the better part of the next 9 months, because I think both of them are, for the first time in a long time, I think both of them are prep top 12 picks. And it's been a long time since, I mean, it's been damn near a decade, I think. I'm trying to think back to when we had 2 prep shortstops go in the top 15. But yeah, I mean, that really speaks to the health of the class. I think it speaks to the upside of the class, and those two are going to battle it out, I'm sure, for that stock. One guy that I do want to address, because I know it's an elephant in the room, and we got some questions on this. That's Brady House. He's the other celebrity of the class. Falls 5 spots. We had him at 15, which was already kind of bearish on him in terms of what the industry thought. We drop him down to number 20. For a guy that has been, kind of largely considered a slam dunk top 3 pick for like 2 or 3 years for this class, I'll come out and say right away, I still think Brady House could be the first pick in this draft. No doubt about it.
No, I think so too.
He's probably the best. Well, I don't think there's actually a doubt. He's the best athlete, the best just pure explosive athlete in this class. He just hasn't hit. And I think we've talked to some different people, some different scouts, some different analysts that say, even if he's a 60 power guy and a 30 hit tool, which is possible. I mean, that might be what Brady House is. You're still talking about a 235 hitter that hits 25 home runs a year, and shifting over from shortstop to third base, he's going to be all of a 55 defender over there, maybe more. So I think when you're talking about Brady House, you're talking about what's the floor and what's the ceiling, and kind of finding a middle ground there, and how you'd grade it out. I got in a really interesting discussion with the scout this week about who would you rather have? Would you rather have Brady House, or would you rather have Alex Binelas, who's currently number 11 on our list? And that's a tough question, because I think Binelas is a slam dunk big league hitter. I think he's going to be a 255, 260 hitter at worst. I think he's going to be 22 to 28 home runs. Love the swing. It's mechanically sound. He should move quickly. Whereas I think Brady House is going to be, 4.5 years, because you want to get the most out of him you can. So are we too low on him at 20? Maybe, but you'd kind of like to see him hit some of these arms.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly think Binelas has maybe a higher floor. And yeah, I saw that conversation.
I definitely agree.
Some other things that were going on. But I think we underrate the fact that Binelas wasn't challenged a ton defensively. I mean, he spoke about it, with the guys that sort of he had pitching in his rotation, just didn't see a lot of balls over there. It's something he's working on. He is a pretty good athlete. I mean, he is fast for the kind of guy that he is. So I think maybe some of that's underrated. We've seen him hit high-level college pitching in pressure environments and come up with big hits, and I don't think that can totally be underrated. House is the more explosive package. I think I've said it from the beginning of this draft that I think he probably has, the highest impact bat upside of anybody in the draft. But
agreed.
It is hard to totally ignore the lack of approach and pitch recognition. And, power is the loudest tool. It will carry you the furthest. And, other stuff doesn't have to develop as much if you do have that big power. But it gives me pause about a guy that is struggling this way to recognize pitches against, albeit high-level high school pitching, but high-level high school pitching. How is that guy going to fare in the professional ranks? Now, if things change and we go more toward a complex setup, and they can really sort of isolate House if it's the right organization, have him working with the right coaches, have him working on the right things, I'm sure they can hone those skills. But I am one of these people that I don't think you just learn pitch recognition and approach when you have had that many looks and you're that high level of a talent. it's going to be tough to get over that. I don't think it ever really goes away. There's very few guys that are 30% plus strikeout type guys, which I think he could be really at this point. Like he goes into pro ball tomorrow, he's going to strike out a lot, especially guys with good changeups and breaking balls. It's tough for those guys to develop into like the 15% sub that strikeout guys and really get to the power and really maximize that profile. I mean, one that comes to mind is maybe George Springer, but there was a college player that had a much different sort of trajectory to get to that point. He's got plenty of time to do it. He's athletic enough. He's got defensive value. He's going to have the power as well. But the hit tool concerns are very real there. Maybe we were a little bit too aggressive with pushing House down, but he's still in the top 20. And, let's say he moves ahead of, Cowser, Franklin, Usher, Cannon pretty quickly. Then he's in the top 8 we talked about, followed by Andrew Painter, followed by, Steve Hadger, followed by Benalis that we talked about, Andrea Del Castillo, who some people think is, maybe the best college bat in the class. Mahler, like, does he move ahead of Del Castillo and Mahler?
I think
ahead of Hoglund.
I don't think it would take much.
Hauser and Usher, Franklin, even Chase Petty, Cannon. I can see that, but for me, I don't know how he gets really back into the top 10, let alone pushes into the top 6 or 7. But
if you're talking about a guy that has been compared to Bryce Harper in terms of just sheer pure tools, just sheer talent, it wouldn't take much at Jupiter. I mean, if he goes down to Jupiter and he's 7 for 11 with 2 home runs, which we've seen James Wood do, which we've seen Jordan Lawler do, and we've seen Ian Mahler do, a performance like that against some of these arms would shoot him way up.
Yeah. I don't know if I can still get him over. Like, maybe we can get him up to 7. Because I've progressively moved him down over the last 2 months. I think I still had him as like my 2nd or 3rd best player in the class not too long ago.
Yeah.
Maybe as recently as like July.
Well, I'll say this about
bad performance after bad performance after bad performance. And it's like, or uneven performances is probably the best way to put it, that it's hard to buy into it,
Yeah.
And those hit tool concerns do linger on a lot of those guys, It's just, is he more Nolan Gorman than he is Bryce Harper, I guess, or whatever.
That's interesting. Yeah. I mean, I'll say Brady House, my biggest concern with him going into the summer was his body was growing fast. I had frame concerns, body concerns. I don't have those anymore. I think he's going to be fine. Yeah, I think he's just a really strong kid, and I think he's kind of settled into his stature now. So for me, really, it's just the hit tool, and the hit tool is especially for a third base archetype, the most important tool. You gotta produce in the middle of the lineup as a third baseman. So we'll see. I would love to see him just blow up at Jupiter, and then control the Under Armour All-American game and take that into next spring and kind of flip that narrative, because I don't think anybody here is, rooting against Brady House. The kid's just a monster.
Yeah.
So
let's wrap this sucker up with sort of one last discussion topic, if I may. Yeah. And I think it's an interesting one because maybe we doubted what the depth was at this position. Over the course of the summer, it's sort of shown itself to be maybe one of the deeper positions in the draft, relatively speaking, to the position. Of course, I'm talking about the catcher position. Yeah. We have within our top 50 now, okay, we now have 6 catchers. Adrian Del Castillo, who you could consider a catcher, probably. I think maybe his catching is a little bit underrated. Ian Mahler, who we've spoken with, we've been really high on. He's 13, obviously. I'll see him in a few weeks as well. I'm excited for that. Henry Davis from Louisville, who I think continues to move up. He moved up 5 spots. Hunter Goodman, who kind of stayed where he was. I think we were like, all right, Henry Davis is better. We got to make sure he's 1 spot ahead. So Hunter Goodman moved down 1 spot, but pretty much stayed the same. That's a catcher from Memphis. The two big movers in our list, maybe two of the biggest movers. I think Harry Ford at 32 is our biggest mover.
I think so
God.
too.
I think we could push him up more. I think there was a legitimate debate to be had of Harry Ford versus Ian Muller. And I like Ian Muller. So it's not like that's a knock on him. Ford looked that good, really athletic behind the plate. He's homered in, a multiple he homered it
Every day.
but he's homered pretty much every day over the last week and a half. And the bat speed, I think it was Laddie that brought it up, but sort of the lack of a bat wrap, but still the amount of bat speed that he can generate with a really compact stroke. That's unusual. And I think he's a special hitter, a special talent. I would like Ford regardless, whether he was a first baseman, a center fielder, a catcher. It only boosts the stock a little bit. I think he's a guy that we probably could have bumped up even more. And he moved up 119 spots. So he burst his way onto this list.
There is that.
Not a guy. But you know what? That's the beautiful thing about all this is we don't see everything. We watch some of these events. We speak to people. We hear good information. And when you're this high, this early on in the process, you can move somebody up 119 spots. And it's not crazy because you're seeing them for the first time. It's just the nature of the beast with rankings too,
Yeah. It is interesting to see 6 catchers currently with first-round grades. I mean, that never happens. And Joe Mack isn't even one of them. Joe Mack is we have him at like 40 or
46.
Yeah, 46. So he's still kind of pushing for a first-round grade too. And I know, at least I'm a little bit lower on Joe Mack than some other outlets. I know you've got him at 40 or 38 or something like that.
Very high on him.
Yeah, I mean, so there's real catching talent in this class, and Carter Jensen is kind of got a third-round grade as well, so he's certainly in the conversation. But yeah, I don't know how more people haven't fallen in love with Joe Mack after that performance.
And there's guys outside our top 100, a guy like Carter Jensen,
Melendez,
catcher,
Rene Lastris.
Yeah, exactly. I'm less of a Baumeister guy. You're still pushing that narrative, but
a little bit. I don't even know if I like Baumeister as a catcher anymore after seeing him throw. But then you got college guys.
Top 8 or so, 9 even. Casey Opitz didn't sign last year, but is a phenomenal defensive catcher.
Yeah.
There's a really talented group right there that there's going to be some starting major league backstops that come from this class, in my opinion.
I agree. Yeah, and on the Muller Harry Ford note, I think Muller definitely has the better hit tool right now. They've got pretty even power. Harry Ford's got some pretty insane power. Harry Ford is squarely a better athlete. I mean, he might be a 60 runner behind the plate. And he was very, very active behind the plate. I think Muller probably has him in the arm category and just as a pure, prototypical catcher, if you will. But I'm going to be really interested to see what happens with Harry Ford because right now we've got him in the first round, and I have no reason to believe his tools are going to fall off the plate. I mean, the kid is special. So, I think that's a great point. It could be a weird year. I mean, if we get 2 or 3 prep shortstops in the top 15 and even if we get 4 catchers in the first round, both of those are super rare.
Imagine if there's 2 or 3 prep catchers in the first round. That seems crazy. And I
was telling you the other day.
I feel like just based on the history, the nature of that archetype, it's probably going to push somebody down. Somebody's going to get pushed later than where they probably should be drafted because there's going to be somebody in their model or their no-no list. We don't draft prep catchers with our first pick. Some GM that's nervous about keeping his job. That seems like it's realistic. But all right, Joe, I think we've done a good job of teasing some of the bigger updates, some of the things that we changed, some of the things that have changed in our thought process. I think that's, part of this is from month to month, week to week, day to day. I'm not going to say minute to minute, an hour, but I guess I could. Our perspective changes and things shift, and you learn more about a player. You learn more about a particular metric or something that, puts a different lens, different, color shades onto things. And I think that's what we've been able to illustrate. But I encourage everyone to go out there. Please dig in, read the list, ask us questions, tell us what we got wrong. And we'll come back next month with a new update at least 50 more guys rolling out there and digging into some of our off-season boards and some of these different things that we as a site have coming. Want to tease that a little bit. The team rankings will start in less than a month. So a lot of information, a lot of stuff coming. We're not going to stop with any of the draft content. I think we'll have some offshoot articles and different live looks. We still got a few more events that Tyler and the guys are going to be down at. But Joe, any last words, last 10% before we sign off here and send the people on their way?
First thing to look out for, pretty much 2 weeks from today, we are going to push out our first mock draft. First 30 picks. So that'll be a lot of fun.
Sox are picking too.
Yeah, sorry about that, man.
What do you mean? Are you kidding me? I actually cheer against the Red Sox now, so I'll have better prospects to watch in season next year and write about in my Red Sox list. You know what the Red Sox list for the first 2 years of Prospects Live has been like? You know what that's been like? I've been way too excited about Bobby Dahlback and Michael Chavis before anybody in Boston was. All right.
Yeah, it is really fun to cheer for guys with one tool.
Exactly. All right.
You do need a guy to root for, man.
The hometown team. We're going to wrap this sucker up. Thank you for joining us again. This has been another episode of the 2021 MLB Draft.